The next slide for the 1920s, it was the host of the newly developed instruments that enabled doctors the chart and the chance to change the function of the body and diagnose diseases more easily. Hans Berger, fascinated by the function of the brain and the relationship between the brain and the mind, he, at the end of the decade, devised the electrophallograph and successfully recorded the first electrophallogram, also known as an EEG. It became a vital source of the information for doctors examining patients who had suffered significant head injuries, cerebral infections, brain tumors, and illness related to the nervous system. The next slide was talking about George N. Palikulu, who was a physician and studied the female genitalia on guinea pigs and their menstrual cycle. He identified their similar changes in the vaginal cells of women, and he noted that the abnormalities in the cells for those patients affiliated with the cervix, and which could also be connected to cervical cancer. The procedure in which cells are subject to change and staining color technique, which is how he figured out this disease. The next era is 1931 to 1950. So in the 1930s, a man named Bob Hoffman, who's a weightlifter, published what was arguably the first fitness magazine. It pushed weightlifting as the route of health, athleticism, and functional strength. Joe Weider followed, but the agenda in his magazines was bodybuilding. He basically was more on the route of developing of an aesthetic, lean, and muscular body. Both pursuits offered similar benefits in strength, health, and athleticism, but the kind of training involved in each was very different. So also in this era, Zercher deadlift and Zercher squat was a competing weightlifting competition move in the 1930s. He was training in the house's basement with very rudimentary, not adequate equipment, and it didn't have a squat rack, so it's kind of dangerous back then. But without the squat rack, the only way to lift the weight up was to do the squats in the position and then continue to squat. Also, Zercher, arched overhead press, but was the way to overhead press in the old days. The lifters would lean back sometimes a lot, and it's not good for your back. Overhead press was done old school way and may be one of the best exercises to build thoracic support. But we all know it's not true now. So more into the 1940s, slenderizing equipment promised to remove one's hip and thighs. Massage women's problems areas. Slendering Salin claimed to help women lose weight without exercise by stimulating muscle contractions. In 1942, the big thing was that the Army updated the requirements for the men and women, developed a physical regain designed to prepare soldiers for real-world combat. This included running, marching, strength training, and calisthenics. They prepared for war, and men had to show their best routines at home before joining.